Everybody, welcome back for the afternoon session. And our first speaker is Gilles Pagès from Paris 6 about functional convex order preserving approximation, etc. A long title, so I leave it to you.
So thank you for the introduction. The title is a bit long. So I would like first to thank the organizers for the invitation. It was my first time in Rio, so I will now work more on options in the next few years, I guess. Because in fact, in this talk, I will really speak about options. It's essentially devoted to a talk devoted to convex order. So it's maybe a slightly old-fashioned topic, working partly on some old-fashioned models like local volatility models, but I think there are some ideas which can be interesting for future works on close topics. Okay, so I will try to start with something really elementary. So you consider a Black-Scholes dynamics very classical with volatility sigma, and you consider a vanilla European options with a payoff phi, and you have its price given under the usual. I don't speak about interest rate essentially in this talk, and you have this price which is given by the risk neutral expectation under the risk neutral probability, and then. Quid of the monotonicity of the function sigma maps to the premium of this option. And we know that if phi is convex for every t, then this function is non-decreasing, or equivalently, this x sigma t is a processus croissant pour l'ordre convexe, which acronym is PCOC, which can be pronounced as peacock. So that's why the French community decided to call this kind of process, which are non-decreasing for the convex order, as peacock. Okay, so what's the proof? The proof is very simple. You just differentiate under the expectation, and then you make a change of probability. So you have that, which is really elementary. The x sigma t, the price, and wt minus sigma capital T, which comes from the pathwise differentiation. And then you make a change of probability so that Wt minus sigma t becomes a Brownian motion. And you apply Girsanov, and then you see that this quantity, this expectation becomes this expectation. And we know that as phi is convex, its right derivative is increasing. So you have here something which is increasing as a function of B capital T. B capital T itself is a function which is increasing, and so by a comonotonicity argument, you see that this is greater than the product, this expectation is greater than the product of these two expectations, and of course the Brownian is centered, so it's 0. So you see that the derivative is 0. Okay, so you have a more general result which goes back to 2008 due to Peter Carr and co-authors, which says that you have essentially the same result for the Asian, in some sense, process derived from the risky asset. That means the mean 1 over capital T, integration between 0 and capital T of our risky asset time dt. So we know that this result, I won't prove it at that moment, but we can prove that this function, the sigma given the expectation of this function, is non-negative. Is non-decreasing because its differentiate is non-negative. Okay, there have been many developments around this idea of peacock. Everything started from a new proof given by Mark Yor, and in some sense this talk is a tribute to these last works he made on this topic. A new proof provided by Mark Yor based on the Brownian sheet, and of course we know, many of us at least know that by Keller theorems, being a peacock is equivalent to be a one marginal martingale. And for example, in a monography by Hirsch, Rouanet, Profeta, and yours, there are explicit representation and many extensions with a very long list of peacocks of many, many kinds. Okay. I provided a few years ago an alternative proof based on functional comonotony, but that's not the topic today. Okay, these two results suggest many other questions which are very natural. For example, to look to general local volatility model, what we could call a functional convex order. Functional in the sense that we will consider now that sigma is not constant, but sigma is a function. These go back to the first work in this direction is due to Hayek in 1985, of course not in a financial framework, but we also all know the very famous result by El Karoui, Jean Blanc, and Shreve in 1998, which says that if the volatility, the local volatility is bounded, lower and upper bounded by constant, then the premium of the option is bounded by below and above by the Black-Scholes premium of this option, at least for convex payoff. Of course, there are also work by Martini, etc., in that topic. But you can think about also more general path-dependent, not only vanilla options, and for path-dependent payoff, path-dependent payoff, you have work by Brown, Rogers, and Hobson in 2001. Many contributions by Ruschendorf, not especially in the financial framework, but he spent much effort on this kind of problem. We can also think about American and Bermuda options. For example, FAM, and again, Ruschendorf worked on that in the 10 years ago. And then you can also consider some jumpy, risky asset dynamics for the risky asset. For example, you have work by Ruschendorf and Bergamtum in 2007. So you can, in some sense, try to establish these convex order results in various frameworks, like American option, with or without jumps, etc., etc., etc. Okay, and more recently, of course, we have works by Begelbock, Tan, Touzy, Henri Labordère, etc., and co-authors, which treat this problem through optimal transport. It's a slightly different way to look at these upper and lower bounds, but in some sense, it may yield similar results. Okay, so what is the main result I will speak about today? Essentially, it's the first general result I will speak about today. We consider two functions, sigma and theta, which are not volatility, because in fact it's just there is no x here. So it's just a diffusion, a local martingale, in fact a martingale diffusion with respect to the Brownian motion, Markovian, that means it's a standard SDE. So you have sigma and theta, which have linear growth in x, uniformly in t, and we consider the two solutions, x sigma and x theta, supposed to be the unique weak solutions. So it's an assumption, the uniqueness, to these two SDEs, one driven by sigma and one driven by theta. And then we say that, okay, the Brownian motion are different because it's weak solutions, so we have no reason to take the same Brownian motion, but it doesn't play any role. So what I say that if there is a partitioning function kappa, which has linear growth, such that kappa is convex in space for every t between 0 and capital T, and if we can put kappa in between sigma and theta, then for every functional defined on the set of convex functions between 0t and r, which is convex with norm sup polynomial growth, which implies it's continuous for the norm sup, then you have that the expectation of f of x sigma is lower than the expectation of f of x theta, which is in some sense an extension, a functional extension of this Peacock property that I mentioned in the first slides. Okay, and then you have a variant of that, what we can call a domination property, which says that if the modulus, the absolute value of sigma, or let's say if sigma is positive, sigma is between 0 and theta, and that theta is convex, then the conclusion still holds. So what's the idea to prove that? In fact, if you go to the core of the result, it's very, very elementary. In fact, you consider just that you have a random variable defined on omega taking value in R, which is integrable and centered. And then you consider the functional operator Q phi, which maps the function phi onto the expectation of phi of u z which makes up a function of u, of course, and this function is clearly convex. If phi is convex, it attains its minimum at 0. It's a consequence of the standard Jensen inequality, but it's a convex function which attains its minimum at 0, must be non-increasing on the negative real numbers and non-decreasing on the non-negative real numbers. And furthermore, if Z has a symmetric distribution, then Q phi is an even function, symmetric function, and satisfies this obvious maximum principle, which it attains its maximum over minus A at A. Okay, so the proof is what I just said. So you see by the Jensen inequality that Q phi of U is always greater than phi of the expectation of uz, and of course phi of u expectation of z is phi of 0, and phi of 0 is q of phi of 0, and so it's minimum at 0, and you have the conclusion that I just mentioned. Okay, that's really elementary, and then doing that, the idea that I try to maybe to popularize in this talk is to adopt a reasoning, not a direct reasoning in continuous time, but a reasoning using some discrete time approximation. Why I want to do that? Because after this first step, which is the mimicking in discrete time of diffusion processes, I will in fact apply that to the Euler schemes. And what will be interesting, I announced that right now, that's the main interest of this approach, is that we will be able, using this way of proving things, to provide some approximating discretization scheme which satisfies the same convex order than the limiting models. Okay, so we consider a sequence of IID centered random variable, and we define this by induction, which this kind of arch model. Xk plus 1 is xk plus sigma k of xk is zk plus 1. And we assume that sigma k and theta k have a linear growth in space, both of them. So we can write the dynamic programming for a functional f defined on the R to the n plus 1. We define mk and ak, the martingales associated to this payoff. We can call that some payoff. And then we define also the sequence of operator associated to the random variable zk by qk of phi is the expectation of phi of uzk, like that. Then by a first backward induction and the definition of the kernel qk, you may very easily show that mk and nk, the two martingales, in fact at time k, are functionals of the k plus 1 first k plus 1 component of x and y respectively. So it defines some function phi k, capital phi k and capital psi k, like that, which are recursively defined by phi n is equal to f at terminal time, and then phi k of small x0 k. So this means the k plus 1 term, first term of an n plus 1 tuple x0 xn. Is equal to, so this looks a bit strange, involved as a definition, but it's very simple. We just write this recursion here in distribution in some sense. So using this operator qk plus 1, it's qk plus 1 applied to phi k plus 1 x0k comma xk plus the random, so it applies at this place here. uz, you make uz here, and applied at sigma k of xk. And you have exactly the same for the sequences psi k. So we have this dynamic programming, which is path dependent. It's just an extension of the standard Markovian dynamic programming principle. And now we'll assume that all the functions sigma k are non-negative and convex. Then by our improved Jensen's lemma, which is not an improved Jensen's lemma, it's just a revisit, we just have the Jensen lemma revisited, and then we can prove that for every function g from rk plus 2 to r, which is convex, then the function of x0k and u, which maps x0k and u to qk plus 1 g of x0k xk plus the variable, taken at u is in fact equal to this quantity, so under this assumption, this formulation, it's easier to understand, is convex in x0, x1, xk, and also in u. So that first, this function of u for x0k and fixed is decreasing on the negative real numbers and increasing, or at least non-decreasing, on the positive real numbers. And secondly, you have the propagation of the convexity in x0k. That means that we start from a convex function of x0k, and we have now a function of x0k plus 1, and now we have a function which is still convex in x0k. So now we can make a second backward induction, which implies that using this one-step proof, we can prove by a backward induction that, in fact, all the functions phi k that I mentioned 2 slides ago are, in fact, convex. And the third backward induction, which is the key of the proof, we will prove by a backward induction that phi k is always lower than psi k. And how do we proceed? First, we note, of course, that at terminal time you have equality, and then we assume that phi k plus 1 is lower than psi k plus 1. Then we consider phi k of x0k, so it's qk plus 1, phi k plus 1 of x0k, xk plus the variable of interest taken at sigma k of xk. But we know that as it is increasing in u here in this variable, we knew that we can replace sigma k by theta k because our assumption is that theta k is lower than theta k, sigma k is lower than theta k. And then once we are here, as it is a positive operator, qk plus 1 is, of course, a positive operator. Once you are here, you can replace phi k plus 1 by psi k plus 1, like that. And then if you look at qk plus 1 of psi k plus 1 taken at theta k, it's exactly psi k. So by this backward induction, we prove that if phi k plus 1 is lower than psi k plus 1, then phi k is lower than psi k. And of course, you can apply that. Of course, if you assume now that theta k is non-negative and convex, then you can prove exactly the same way around, that the functions psi k are convex, and then you prove that by a backward induction that phi n is low. If phi n is lower than psi n, then psi k is lower, phi k is lower than psi k by a backward induction as well. Okay, so this discrete time setting, in my opinion, has its own interest because that means that things can be true for discrete time. You can propagate this convexity property on a discrete time dynamics. But let's switch to the core of what I wanted to tell you, which is about the diffusion. So the second step of the proof is just to go back to continuous time. So we know that the Euler scheme, the discrete time Euler scheme with step t over n, starting from small x, which is defined here, related to the diffusion coefficient sigma with a Brownian increment, like that. So we said zk is equal to the Brownian increment. Exactly mimics, it's typically an example of the discrete time models that I just spoke about in the former slides. And it satisfies the linear growth of sigma and theta, implies that, of course, everybody has a supremum with finite LP moment for any p. So we have no problem of integrability. So now we will consider the interpolator, so it's just purely technical, of an n plus 1 tuple in Rn plus 1. That means that we will just interpolate. We associate to tnk the value xk, and to tnk plus 1 the value xk plus 1, and we just make some piecewise affine interpolation. So it's completely trivial. But what we know is that if f is a convex functional defined on the Wiener space, let's say, with R polynomial growth, we know that fn of x0n defined as f at the interpolation of x0n as just defined remains a convex function this time on Rn plus 1. So f convex implies fn convex, and then that's the moment. So far we work with sigma and theta, but now we will work with sigma and kappa and theta. We have these two pairs, the purple pair and the blue pair. sigma kappa and kappa theta. And we know that the expectation of f of x tilde sigma n, which is the interpolation of the Euler scheme, is equal to the expectation of fn of x bar sigma n, which is a discrete time problem. So we know that it is lower than the same functional expectation of the same functional applied to kappa, with the Euler scheme related to kappa. And then, for the same reason, the Euler scheme which is convex, because kappa is convex. And now, kappa being convex, we can also apply the same rule between kappa and theta. And so we have the expectation of fn of x kappa n t n k, etc., is lower than the same functional applied to the Euler scheme related to the diffusion coefficient theta. So in the end, you have that the expectation of f of x tilde sigma n is lower than the expectation of f of x tilde theta n, like that. Okay, and we only use that kappa is convex, because as we saw in the former slides in discrete time, when you have a pair, in the former proof it was sigma and theta, but either sigma is convex, either sigma is convex or theta is convex, it's enough to have the result of the convex order. So the step 2 of this second part of the proof is simply to look in the Jacod-Chiryayev somewhere, and you very quickly understand that, in fact, this interpolated Euler scheme converge in distribution for the topology of the uniform convergence on compact set toward the true solution, weak solution x sigma. And that's why I asked for uniqueness of the weak solution. But everything is weak here. We don't need to have some unique pathwise uniqueness or existence. Only weak existence and uniqueness are required. So in that case, we see that the expectation by an uniform integrability argument is very easy to show that having that and this domination in LP for every P, we know that the expectation of f of x sigma will be the limit of the expectation of f of its interpolated Euler scheme as the step of the Euler scheme goes to 0. It's the same for theta. So, of course, the conclusion is that you have that which is lower than the expectation of f of x theta. So the proof is complete. And once again, what is interesting in my opinion is that doing so, we have approximated the problem of this, to establish this convex order. We use some approximation which can be simulated on a computer. And this approximation that can be computed on the, simulated on the computer satisfied also this convex order. So in turn, it may avoid some arbitrage when you do some approximation, for example, in a financial framework. So we have essentially two situations. You have two kinds of sandwiches. You see, you have the case where kappa is convex, and you can is a partitioning function between two functions which are not convex. And then we know that the expectation of convex functional depending on the diffusion with the diffusion coefficient sigma are dominated always by the expectation of the same functional of the diffusion with diffusion coefficient theta. And the dual situation, which is in fact where you don't use kappa as a partitioning function. Now you switch the role of kappa, theta, and sigma, and now we have kappa, which is any function, not any function, but which is just a continuous function with linear growth, and you can, if you can upper bound it and lower bound it by two convex functions, you have that any convex, the expectation of any convex functional of the diffusion driven by kappa will be lower bounded and upper bounded, respectively, by the expectation of the same convex functional for the diffusion driven by sigma and theta. Okay, of course, I think it's well known by people from the PD world that this result, in fact, in the case of vanilla option, that means when the f of the function x is a small f of x at time t, can be very easily, in fact, in 5 lines, can be established by a PD argument based on the maximum principle. In the most general case, with a functional which is only convex and having linear growth, not linear, polynomial growth, I guess it's not so clear, but I'm not an expert in PDE. So the Euler scheme is a simulable approximation which preserves convex order. So having that in mind, it's possible, as I said already twice, to use Euler scheme as a good approximator respecting the convex order. Okay, we have essentially two applications. The first one is very natural and not really original in some sense. It's just to apply that to local volatility model. That means that we consider now that sigma of x is of the form x times sigma tilde of t of x, where sigma tilde is a bounded continuous function. So the weak solution a posteriori satisfies this equality, and so it's strictly positive, idem for theta. So if we can partition sigma tilde and theta tilde by a function kappa tilde such that x of kappa tilde of tx is convex in x for every t on the whole real line. That means that you have to extend things on the negative real line, but it's not a problem usually since sigma tilde and theta tilde are bounded. Then you have the convex order for option. So that yields to this result, which can be as an extension of the result by Carr and co-authors that I mentioned on the second slide of this talk. And also a proof completely different from that Marchior found 5 or 6 years ago. Okay, so that's the same version as before, but for in the case of local volatility models. So I will not comment any further this slide. The second application is maybe not really more useful in practice because I'm not sure that many people use CEV model as a local volatility model in practice. But anyway, it's a work, it's something that we developed recently with my PhD student Ahmed Fadili. So we consider a concave local volatility model. That means that sigma x equal to x sigma tilde of x is a concave function. And we look at dst, sigma of st dwt, and we assume that sigma is concave. So you think about the CEV model, which is a typical example of that. And then for every fixed u, which is strictly positive, the concavity property implies that sigma x is lower than this quantity, sigma u plus sigma prime u, x minus u positive part, like that. So that if you consider now the displaced, the following diffusion dxu of t, which is sigma of u, so u is a fixed variable, it's a fixed parameter so far, plus sigma prime of u, xu of t minus u, positive part dwt, with xu0 is equal to s0, then you see that for every convex vanilla payoff, maybe I have a drawing. Yes, it's maybe clearer like that. You consider your convex function sigma of x like that, and then you consider the tangent at u like that, and we consider this function is clearly convex. So we'll apply the convex order between sigma and kappa in some sense. Let's call it kappa, which is convex like that. So that's the tangent which is here. So we consider, of course, the diffusion with having as a driving diffusion coefficient this quantity here. And we know that the expectation for any convex vanilla payoff phi from R plus to R plus, the expectation of phi of ST is lower than the infimum over all possible choice of U on the positive real line of the expectation of phi of xu capital T. But in fact, if you look a bit more carefully to this solution xu, if you define theta u is sigma prime of u over sigma u minus u, which is strictly positive by concavity, then you see that xu of t plus theta of u is equal to s0 plus theta of u plus this quantity. And in fact, it's just a shifted Black-Scholes dynamics. And of course, you can compute completely, for example, in the case of the call. But in the case of the call, we have a closed form in a CEV model. But here it works for any sigma which is concave. You see that we will have that the expectation the price of the call will be lower than the infimum over all the Black-Scholes calls correspond with this value for the risky asset, this value for the strike, and this value for the volatility. Okay, so that's the drawing which corresponds to this situation. And then we can even have a tractable upper bound, because after some efforts, we proved that the function u, the call as a function of u, it's not a y, it's a x, y, u, it's an x here, is differentiable, and that its differential is non-negative on the max of S0k and plus infinity. So that means that in fact our expectation for the call is lower than the minimum between u and max and the max of S0 and the strike of all this Black-Scholes call price. And so it leads to a very fast dichotomy search for the argmin. In fact, even faster, because we know that we have not to consider some too small u. However, don't think that we can take u between the minimum and the maximum, because that would mean that at the money, the premium of this option would be exactly the Black-Scholes formula, which is not true. I didn't bring some numerical experiment in my computer, but what I can tell you is that when you are close to the moneyness, when S0 and K are close, you can consider U close to S0 and K as well, and then you have only 2 or 3, 4 basis points different between this price and this price when you consider the true CEV model. Because in that case, you have a reference price. We even had the idea that maybe our reference price was not so referential, and that maybe the approximation is better, but well, we have no real opinion on that at this stage.
What do you mean by the last line?
The last line.
The very last line.
A dichotomy search for the argmin. You compute at 0 and at that value, and then you consider, yes, then you cut half, and you don't know the dichotomy algorithm for. No, it's for that problem. You use you try to, by any means at your disposal, you have to minimize over a compact set. So it's tractable in some way, usually, because this function is considered as everything is explicit. So dichotomy search seemed to me a very simple and robust method to do that. Okay. So you could ask me why no drift? Because I was interested in at the origin, I was interested in peacocks. And as I said, peacock are some kind of one marginal martingale. So it's something which it's some fake martingales. So I didn't want to include some drift at the beginning, but in practice, it can be useful to include some drift. And in fact, Hayek in the 1985 worked on that and proved that for vanilla, of course, he didn't speak like that. He had also a result, which is the following. We consider now two diffusion with a drift, B, and sigma and theta, the same drift, B, and two diffusion coefficients, sigma and theta. And W is a standard Q. So far, it's not a Q. It's a standard one-dimensional Brownian motion. Then we assume that B is convex for every T, and Bt of x in absolute value has linear growth too. And we assume that we have a kappa partitioning or dominating assumption as I made, exactly the same one that I made in the martingale framework. Then for every function from R to R, convex and non-decreasing with polynomial growth, you still have this convex order. That means that the expectation of f of x sigma t is lower than the expectation of x theta t. And I didn't write it down on the slides, but in fact, you can extend that to any functional. So Hayek's theorem was exactly, in fact, I wrote extended, but this is not, this is the original Hayek version of the theorem, which is proved entirely in continuous time. But by applying the method I described 10 minutes ago, you can extend this Hayek theorem to any functional, convex functional with polynomial growth, exactly in the same framework as for the martingale case. Okay, so now, more recently, we try to extend that to vector-valued diffusion. So still with my PhD student, Ahmed Fadili. So in some sense, what we wanted was not, we couldn't have good surprise, so we just wanted not to have bad surprise. And so that's essentially what happened, and it essentially relies on this very elementary and simple, not so simple, not as simple as Jensen's lemma revisited, but it's an elementary lemma which says that if you define the preorder of the matrix with D rows and Q columns, you say that A is lower than B if and only if, in the sense, in fact, of the covariance matrix. A is lower than B if and only if A star, star for transpose, is lower than B star in the set of symmetric matrices. And we will say that the function phi having value in these matrices is convex if it satisfies the convexity property for this preorder, which is a twisted lower symbol. And then the proposition is the following. If we consider two non-negative two matrices which do not need to be, it's a typo, you consider two matrices with D in MDQ of R, not symmetric, such that A is lower than B in that sense, and we consider a normalized Q variate normal distribution, normal vector, normally distributed vector, then for every convex function in that sense, F, any function from SDR, which is convex but taking value in R this time, the expectation of F of AZ is lower than the expectation of F of BZ. So taking advantage of this theorem, so we have two notions of convexity. Convexity for function having value in the matrices, which will apply to sigma, theta, and possibly to the drift B. And we have another notion of convex function, as usual, for function from the matrices with D line and Q rows, Q rows and D rows and Q columns, sorry, and having value in R. Okay, so the domain of F is here. It should be RD, probably.
Square matrices.
No. There is no square. No, because Z has dimension Q and A has dimension D and Q, DQ. So AZ has dimension D. So F start from RD and go to R. So it's a typo. Sorry.
A and B in the proposition are already symmetric.
No. I said no, A, B do not need, no. There was many typos for a reason it's too long to explain, because everywhere there was the symmetric matrices. But in fact, it's true for any matrices. And what is not surprising, but what is the good news, that we don't need that A and B commute. That's the good news. The bad news would have been that we need that A and B commute. Should commute. So you have we have the same result here. So formally, it's exactly the same result as before, except that now we are convex with respect to the twisted inferior symbol. And then we have exactly the same result, except that our function should be convex here. Of course, it's again convex with the new definition. Okay, so how much time do you have?
5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, so what I wanted to say, of course, I won't inspect all the cases that I mentioned in the introduction, but I wanted to show you, for example, if you replace the Brownian motion by a Levy process to drive the diffusion. And we assume that you have a finite p moment for this Levy process. We assume also that it is integrable and that hence it is integrable, sorry, and it is centered. So it's a good candidate to be a noise for a diffusion. And in that case, it's a martingale. So you can exactly do the same thing. That means that you can consider a diffusion, a jump diffusion driven by this Levy process. And you assume exactly, so it's always the same result now. You have this partitioning assumption. We say that kappa 1 and kappa 2, which are two candidates here, can be separated by a kappa function, like that. And you can also have this dominating assumption in the case where zeta 1 has a symmetric distribution. In that case, it's, of course, in the case of the Brownian motion, it was for free. And now it's not for free. And if kappa 2 is convex, then for any functional defined on the Skorood space which is convex and Skorood continuous, then and which assume that only for no, it's again for any function on the Skorood space of Cadillac function, f alpha has a polynomial growth. In that case, we again have this functional convex order, which is twice functional, once for the kappa and the process, stochastic process, and one for the functional, like that. So the discrete time is completely identical. It's in fact the same. And then it's just a matter of knowing something about Skorood convergence of Euler scheme. So we know that the genuine Euler scheme, that means the Euler scheme which is extended between two discretization time, the drift part is extended in the scale of the time, but here we have no drift. And the Z is extended in its own scale. That means ZT minus ZTK, for example, between T and TK and T. Converge, so this genuine Euler scheme converge, in fact, in any L p prime lower than P, which is the moment that the Levy distribution of the noise has, for the subnorm topology, hence the Skorood topology as well. So the important information is that it in fact converges with the subnorm. And why does it come from, in some sense? It comes from the very hidden lemma by Jacod in the which was published in the second edition of the Jacod-Chiryayev. So if you look for this lemma in the first edition, you will never find it. And what is the idea? The idea is just to consider, we consider a subdivision as usual, T over n, 2T over n, 3T over n, etc., etc. And then you consider for every T the nearest left neighbor of T in the subdivision, and you define the Cadillac function associated to alpha n. It's not difficult, it's as usual. You have a function. And then you have your subdivision, and then you consider like that. The function with this stepwise constant and Cadillac, as you would do with a continuous function. Oh, modern style. I would have made a better drawing if I knew. Okay, and you can prove that if alpha n converge in the Skorood sense to alpha, then alpha tilde n will still converge in the Skorood sense to alpha. So as we know that the genuine Euler scheme in fact converge for the subnorm, in particular it converges for the Skorood topology, but in fact it's easier to prove it with the subnorm. That's why I mentioned that. Then you apply Jacob lemma, and it's finished. You conclude like in the pathwise continuous setting. So it's for free. You even don't need really to understand what is a diffusion with respect to a Levy process. Okay, so these cases are simply two counter examples. And I will finish by that. We consider two-period dynamics. So this example is provided in a discrete time because it's easier to expose. You have x1 is x small x plus sigma z1. x2 is x1 plus the square root of 2v of x1 z2. And v is a function from R to R plus, which is bounded, twice differentiable, and such as v prime has a strict local maximum at some x0 satisfying v prime of x0 is equal to 0, and v, the second derivative of v at x0 is lower than -1. And then you can prove that the square root of v cannot be convex, of course, and then you do some horrible computation, and in the end you can prove that for sigma small enough, in fact, this model doesn't satisfies the convex order. Okay, so maybe I will stop here. What I can tell as a conclusion is that you can extend that to compare the convex order between two stochastic integrals. You can also apply that to American options, in fact, because as everything relies on the dynamic programming principle, in fact, you can also propagate convexity through the dynamic programming principle for American option, for Bermudian option in a discrete time setting. And then when you have understood that, you can even imagine to extend that, and it works. It's one of the job of my PhD student to extend that to BSDE and reflected BSDE, except that it's not true if you put the Z in the driver, which is the beginning of interesting things with BSDE. But okay, we have counterexample, and we have a counterexample to the counterexample in the sense that if the BSDE have the Z in the driver but is linear, then it still works. So okay, so you can prove all that still making run the same machinery. So thank you for your attention.